So welcome to this video on the MEAH, and we're going to look at examples of how it's used today. And it's used really in different ways. It's used as a reference point. So the reference point is that as we're having a conversation, as we're considering the difficulty someone's going through, that we understand the questions are there to help you consider how someone might be adapting. And we know when people experience trauma, loss or challenge, that there's often a reference point to who or how they used to be, where they are in the present, and what the future looks like. And that's really what the MEAH captures a bit of that, which is really important. It obviously locates the difficulty to an aspect which is really important to the person. So, like I say, within a conversation, when you're having a conversation, and these are often non-directed, non-judgmental conversations, so we're looking for the person to reveal information, that's one of the outcomes that we're just sort of exploring it and getting through. And you probably got that impression from the last few videos. So the MEAH can be used as a reference point in a clinical conversation when we're trying to support someone, to help you identify the questions, to help you consider what to look out for. So we can look out for feelings, we can look out for sort of acceptance, we can look out for metaphors, we can look out for how people look forward with hope. It's used in other ways too. It's used obviously as a screening tool. So it's good for interaction, but also if you want to think, right, I want to get a screening process going on and the person locating the difficulty and getting that scored, it can tell you if there could be a need to talk about it further, if acceptance has happened, or what's going on with that, because we look at it as a scale. And so it's used as a screening tool that then you can have a conversation on the back on. So you have the scores already and you can have the conversation, or it can be used within an interview where you get that information and you literally score it by the scale. So as you have the conversations, you can see how the questions can be used generically, or they can be very specific and get a numerical value to the final four questions that are asked. Finally, it's also used online in a similar way, and we found from our research that actually it's easier to be used online. So when we think about the MEAH and we think about the outcomes from it, what we can see is that there can be various different outcomes. So obviously it can map a response, it can help reveal a response, and that as an outcome is great because it's about being able to journey with the person, seeing where they are, and walking with them, so listening, exploring, understanding, trying to look through their own eyes. So that as an outcome is really good, especially with difficulties. Obviously it's focusing on one aspect, and that helps to keep the conversation limited. So the other things that obviously come through from the MEAH is it might be that some goals can be established, and you go through as a therapist to look at goals, or coping mechanisms start to come through, and I mentioned that could be really useful, and that again links to the other stories and who they know that's gone through something similar that might be again experiencing different elements or similar elements, and having those peer discussion can be really useful. So the outcomes can be just like that. So what we've got for you is some examples of interactions that occur with students following training, and these are students with a screening tool which is an earlier version of it. So we've adapted it and changed it now, and like I say, when we think about how it's used, you can see that actually it could be used as a expanded tool with scales and numbers, but also quite a reduced score tool. So enjoy the videos, and I hope it gives you a greater insight to what's going on when we talk about this tool. So the first example we're going to have a look at today is the example of an online consultation, and we fill out the MEAH questionnaire. It is a particular version of it, so the first question I don't think is worded particularly well, and the last one again, the wording is something you might need to just consider. The example is a good example, and it shows the simplicity of using an online tool.
Yeah, I'm a student physio, and we're just going to go through this screening tool if that's all right with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is there's about 5 questions, and essentially most of them are just using like a ranking scale for you to respond. And so the first question is, can you read it as well? So just name the one aspect of your adaptation that you're finding most difficult. So what is your sort of difficulty? If you could verbally respond. Thank you.
My biggest difficulty, I think, is raised muscle tone. That's the most frustrating, and neurological fatigue. They're equally.
Okay, thank you. And could you scroll down now? Thank you. Okay. And question 2, regarding the difficulty you've identified, how hopeful are you right now that you can or will overcome it? And you see there it's ranked from +4 to -4. If you could read through those options and then just give your response. Thank you.
Yeah. Sadly, it's for muscle tone. I don't want to take, this is in the context of, I really don't want to take any pharmacological intervention. I've tried that in the past, and that just brings on my neurological fatigue 10 times worse than usual. So I'm on a -4.
Okay. No, thank you. And could you scroll down again to question 3? And so regarding the difficulty you have identified, so the raised muscle tone and the neurological fatigue, do you feel able to psychologically adapt to it right now?
Yeah, I'm a +4 on that. As a pragmatic optimist, I sort of know the reality of my position.
Okay, perfect. And on to question 4. The next 2 questions are regarding mood. So for question 4, what level of energy do you have today right now with regards to dealing with this difficulty?
Probably about +2.
Okay, thank you. And then final question, question 5. Can you give a score on how you feel about the difficulty in a range from so pleasant to unpleasant? So this is your feelings about this difficulty.
I'm going to go a 0 for that one.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So we're just going to move on to some therapeutic questions now. I probably don't need the screen, the shared screen anymore, but it's okay. And yeah, so is it all right if we move on to some therapeutic questions?
Yeah, please do.
Perfect, thank you. So just trying to have a think about the issues that you raised, and could you tell me a bit more about maybe how this raised muscle tone has affected you and how you managed to, because you mentioned like quite a high, you got quite good rationale about it and you're a realist, how you managed to cope with this issue?
It manifests itself in a more extreme form with the muscles going into a tonic response, with my arm coming up around my ears, my affected arm, when I'm in an anxious state. So, for instance, if I was visiting my son in London driving, and we missed a turn, and London is just such a nightmare to drive around, and I'm aware of box junctions and things, and my arm is way up, and that's because of a mistake I made. It's those sorts of situations, or if I'm physically challenging myself. Pre-pandemic, we had a trip to Guyana, and I use an FES to walk with, and I did a very challenging scramble up through some rainforest on a track, and my wife had taken some photographs of me, and my arm was way up, so right up here. I mean, I felt perfectly safe.
Yeah.
It's just an uncontrollable, unconscious response.
Okay.
Now, in public, that can be quite disconcerting for members of the public. So I'm very aware of other people's responses. I think anybody who has got that type of sort of, it's not a spasticity, but it looks that way. And I think people automatically think, therefore, you're intellectually challenged, you could be a threat to them, and they treat you very, very differently.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you don't really like let it stop you. Would you say that you can try to continue with doing the things you want to do as much as possible?
Yeah. I mean, as by removing anxiety, I can plan very well now. So I tend to plan journeys. As I said, if I'm driving the car, it can be a problem. If I hit an unfamiliar situation. So I try and plan ahead, the delight, the joy of things like Google Maps and being able to go onto street scene. I've got a very, very good visual memory. I always have had. So if I'm going to an unfamiliar place, as I'm involved in a lot of research, and Andrew might have told you, a lot of that is in Liverpool. So I check ahead if I'm going to somewhere that's unfamiliar, and I just look at Google Maps and I check on street furniture approaching the destination. So I can get with my sat nav to wherever I need to go. And as soon as I hit sort of zebra crossings, traffic lights, all those sorts of things, familiar landmarks, it removes my anxiety and it reduces my muscle tone. So
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
practical solutions that I've worked out in the last 16 years for myself.
Yeah. Oh no, that sounds like you really you're able to personally like know how to cope with it. Is there that's really good that you are taking that into your own hands. Is there anyone particular you've maybe taken advice from over the years to try and learn all these sort of helping tactics, or any groups or any other people that you know that suffer in the same way?
I can honestly say I've only had one piece of useful advice in over the years, and that was early on when I was experiencing neurological fatigue and I didn't understand what it was, and I joined a Headway group, the brain injury charity.
Yeah.
And as soon as I mentioned the sort of general feelings of my neurological fatigue, the OT who ran the group knew straight away what I was talking about, and she gave me permission to feel rubbish.
Yeah.
And that was like a massive thundercloud just moving away. It's still there. This time of year, it's really, really annoying. It's a chronic situation now. And I'm just waiting for next month. As soon as I hit March, I will wake up. And then if I'm challenging now, then I'm really challenging. I sort of get all of my mojo back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think we've probably gone over the questions that I need to go over. Thank you so much for sharing. And
Okay, it's a
sounds
pleasure.
like, yeah, no, thank you.